I had no idea that looking for a new job would lead me into a nightmare. I once had 2 job interviews in North Carolina. At the time, I was living in New York, stuck in a dead-end job that drained the life out of me. These interviews were my ticket to a fresh start. Corporate office roles, with great benefits, solid salaries, and the promise of warmer weather. To save money, I decided to drive down instead of flying. Big mistake. I left on a Thursday night after work, exhausted from a long day. I grabbed my suitcase, said a quick goodbye to my family, and hit the road. The drive was supposed to take about 8 hours, putting me at my destination around 2 a.m. I loaded up on coffee for the first few hours, but no amount of caffeine could fight off the fatigue. I hadn't slept much the night before, too anxious about the interviews, and now I was pushing myself to drive through the night. By midnight, I was running on fumes. The highway was eerily empty, and my eyelids felt like they were made of lead. I was about 2 hours away from the Comfort Inn where I'd booked a room when something snapped me out of my drowsiness. On the side of the road, standing perfectly still, was a man in a suit. He wasn't hitchhiking or walking, just standing there, facing the road. As I drove past, his head turned to follow my car. I muttered, "What the hell?" and kept driving, my heart racing. I thought about turning back to see if he needed help, but something felt off. I shook it off, blaming my exhaustion. 10 minutes later, I saw another man. Same deal, suit, standing motionless on the side of the road. This time I slowed down, thinking maybe I should stop and ask if he was okay. But as I pulled onto the shoulder, I glanced in my rearview mirror. He was gone. Vanished. My stomach dropped. I hit the gas and didn't look back. I needed to clear my head, so I pulled into the next rest stop. I bought another coffee and sat in the parking lot, trying to calm my nerves. That's when I saw him again, the same man standing under a streetlight. He was middle-aged, clean-shaven, with short brown hair and a blank expression. But the way he was staring directly at my car sent chills down my spine. I didn't wait around. I sped out of there, my hands trembling on the wheel. By now, I was too shaken to keep driving. I pulled off the highway into a deserted parking lot, reclined my seat, and tried to sleep. But every time I closed my eyes, I imagined him standing outside my car, watching me. Finally, I drifted off, only to jolt awake minutes later. My heart was pounding. I scanned the area around my car. Nothing. Then I glanced in the rearview mirror. For a split second, I saw him sitting in the back seat. I screamed, threw open the door, and tumbled out of the car. I scrambled to my feet, staring inside, but the back seat was empty. I was losing my mind. I got back in the car, my heart still racing, and finished the drive in a daze. By the time I checked into the hotel, I was completely drained. I collapsed onto the bed and passed out. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My first interview was at 11 a.m., and I barely had time to shower and change. When the interviewer walked out to greet me, I froze. He looked exactly like the man from the highway. Same face, same suit, same cold expression. I tried to pull myself together, but the resemblance was uncanny. The interview was a disaster. I stumbled through my answers, my mind racing with questions I couldn't answer. Was this real? Was I still hallucinating? I left the office in a daze, with just an hour before my next interview. This one was with a woman, and thankfully, she looked nothing like the man from my nightmares. The interview went smoothly, and I ended up getting the job. I've been working there ever since, and I've settled into life in North Carolina, but I still can't shake the memory of that night. One night, I was driving in Clearfield County, Pennsylvania, to avoid traffic. It was probably a little past midnight, and the road was basically deserted, just the way I like it. I was listening to my usual podcast when my car alerted me that I was low on fuel. I used my Maps app to find the nearest gas station, which was a little further up the secluded road. About 5 minutes later, I pulled into a no-name gas station, the only one around for miles, surrounded by nothing but woods. I pulled up to the pump and noticed a man filling up his old beater pickup truck. He was staring at me as I walked past him and into the shop. Inside, I bought a coffee and paid cash for my gas. When I came back outside, the man was getting into his truck and driving away. After filling up, I got back in my car and continued my drive. However, not even a minute after leaving the station, I noticed that the same pickup truck was sitting next to the woods on the side of the road, turned off. I kept driving, glancing in my rearview mirror, but the truck didn't move. I resumed my podcast and continued on. A few minutes later, I heard another alert from my car. One of my tires was very low. I slowed down and heard a wobbling sound. I opened a window and realized I had a flat tire. I pulled to the side of the road to investigate and discovered my rear driver's side tire was flat. I didn't recall hitting anything that could have caused it. A thought crossed my mind. What if that guy at the gas station slashed it? I took out my phone and looked up the number for my roadside assistance. I heard the sound of a car or truck engine a little down the road behind me, but I didn't see any headlights. It was pitch black. The engine sound stopped abruptly, and it was quiet again. I grabbed an SOS flashlight from my trunk and aimed it down the road. I saw the reflection of a truck's headlights about 200 feet away. It was the same pickup truck. I gasped and ran into the woods, hiding behind a bush and a tree. I called 911, whispering my location and explaining that someone had slashed my tire and was following me. The dispatcher asked for a description of the man and his truck. I heard the truck door open and close. I told the dispatcher that the man had gotten out of his truck. She advised me to stay hidden in the woods if I thought he was a threat and asked if I could see if he was armed. Then the call disconnected due to poor cell reception. I waited, hoping the dispatcher would call me back, but the signal was too weak. I heard another car approaching, then stopping. There was talking. It was the voice of another man. I crept closer to the edge of the woods to get a view of the road. The man from the pickup truck was talking to someone in another stopped pickup truck in the middle of the road, giving a fake explanation of what was happening. At that moment, I rushed into the road, yelling for help and saying I didn't know him. Both men looked at me. I told the new man that the guy had slashed my tire and followed me. The new man gave the suspect a disturbed look while the creepy man denied everything, claiming he'd never seen me. He hurried back to his pickup truck, backed up, and drove off. The new man got out, examined my flat, and offered me a ride into town. I told him the police were on their way, and shortly after, a cop car pulled up. The officer took my info and assured me he'd check the gas station's camera footage to see if it caught the pickup driver slashing my tire. He waited with me until the roadside assistance arrived. The tow truck driver gave me a ride to a shop where my dad picked me up. I never heard back from the police officer, so I guess the footage didn't show anything. It was frightening how close I was to probably being abducted.